Coming up on stage is Jonathan Brouse. He is the Senior Product Manager of Abound Health and Well-Being offering. He focuses on leveraging technology like indoor air quality sensors, touchless access controls, healthy water systems, and smart spaces to enable healthier buildings. Jonathan holds a Bachelor of Chemical Engineering from Miami University of Ohio and a Master's of Business Administration from Emory University. He believes that healthy buildings are a key component of building a healthier future for generations and reducing long-term health risks associated with being indoors. This is going to be interesting. Here's Jonathan.
Thank you. Thank you. First off, I'd like to thank our friends at AirThings for putting on the summit. Thank you very much. So how many of you guys have been in a meeting and it's gone on maybe a little bit too long and you start to get a little bit sleepy? Yeah, okay, pretty much everyone in the room. So that is the cognitive effect of poor indoor air quality. So this is a meeting room in one of our buildings at Carrier. And as you can see, there was a meeting going on. I think there were about 8 people in the room. After a while, the CO2 starts to spike. And meanwhile, this is a LEED Platinum building with double the ventilation rates required by ASHRAE in the United States. So healthy buildings, I think when you think about healthy air, healthy buildings, and the movement, there are really 2 parts. There's the acute effects, which I'll talk about today. So that's productivity loss from poor indoor air quality. But then there are the long-term effects. So this is a study that was done by The Lancet. And this bottom line right here is millions of years of life lost. So what this study looked at is what are the causes of lost life? And if you can see the mini print there, these are all the different things that contribute to decreased years of lost life. Air quality, so particulate matter, and indoor air quality in homes are 2 of the big contributors. Here at Carrier, we focus on three fundamental things. The first one is healthy buildings. The second one is how do you do that sustainably? So sustainability, and then finally comfort. About 100 years ago, Carrier invented modern air conditioning, and then since then, we have grown to be one of the largest HVAC companies in the world. Through our studies, we found that there are about 7 foundations of healthy buildings. So ventilation, air quality, thermal health, filtration, moisture, safety and security, and noise. And when you put all these together, you can create a building that's healthy and functional for its use. So we did 4 studies around the cognitive impacts of air quality in buildings. And today I thought we'd just go on a quick tour through each of these studies. The first study was separated into 2 parts, and then there are 2 other ones that I'll go through. So for the first study, we took 24 participants over the course of 2 weeks and studied them for 6 of those days inside basically it's a laboratory building. So in the bottom of the building, there are very precise controls, and you can control the amount of CO2, VOCs, ventilation, among other things. So it's kind of like a laboratory building. It was a double-blind experiment, and so what that means is the participants didn't know what the room conditions were, and the people actually administering tests didn't know what the conditions were either. And we looked at really 3 different types of building settings to simulate what we think was going on in the real world. The first one was conventional buildings. So that had a typical level of VOCs, as well as ventilation of 20 CFM. The second one was green buildings, which was low concentrations of VOCs, ventilation of about 20 CFM per person, and then green plus buildings. And so that was low VOCs, but increased the ventilation rates to double the standards in the States. So what were the results? Throughout the day, people worked, did their normal job. They were professionals. And then each afternoon, they were given a series of assessments. And they tested information usage, strategy, crisis response, focus activity, breadth of approach, applied activity level, basic activity level, task orientation, and information seeking. And the way these tests worked, they gave them a kind of like a case study. So if you were a mayor of a town and this emergency happened, what would you do? And then there were a series of questions, and they were interviewed on how they would respond in those situations. And what we saw across the board, I don't think is there a laser pointer? There is. Across the board, lower VOCs and increased ventilation was beneficial. And so here again, conventional is supposed to be comparable to your typical office. Green is low VOC, and enhanced green is low VOC and high ventilation. So we took it a step further and we looked at that same information, but we just looked at what was the impact of CO2. And so you see, as your CO2 declines, your scores also improve. So here, this bottom axis right here is CO2. So dropping CO2, you see basic activity increasing. And so pretty much across the board, lower CO2 is better in terms of productivity.
From improved decision-making to a doubling of cognitive performance scores. In Study 1, the CogEffects IEQ study, scientists found a strong connection between indoor environmental quality and cognitive function.
If we actually pay attention and improve the ventilation, lower the carbon dioxide, lower the volatile organic compounds from all sorts of building materials, we can actually see better performance, better cognitive performance of people that are in those environments.
Now, in Study 2, the CogEffects Building Omics study, they turned their attention to the bigger picture.
We know that the indoor environmental quality matters for health and cognitive function. What this study is telling us is there's more to it. It's the building as a whole, a holistic approach to the impact of buildings on our overall health and well-being.
Most people spend a significant amount of their time in their workplaces. So keeping the workplaces optimal for optimal productivity is very essential.
Study 2 sought to measure the performance of people in green-certified, high-performing buildings and how building factors impact that cognitive performance.
So we went to 10 buildings around the US and we tracked them over the course of a week. Made sure to measure the environmental quality of those buildings. At the same time, we tracked their cognitive function to see if those building environments impacted their cognitive function.
People seem to be able to strategize better. People seem to respond to exigencies with better use of strategies. They appear more focused and the task orientation appears to be better.
We know that the building impacts us while we're there, but we also think that the building can impact us after we leave.
And what we're seeing now is that buildings actually influence our ability to sleep that evening. So when you're in a better performing environment, it's impacting your ability to rest and recover later that day.
Whether at home or in the office, the results of the study are far-reaching and significant. Occupants of green-certified, high-performing buildings saw 26% higher cognitive function scores, slept better, and reported fewer health symptoms. And as new challenges emerge, these findings may help the world navigate them intelligently.
When you think of the urbanization that's going around the world now, we will see a doubling of our built environment before this century is over. We better do it right. We better do it better, both energy-wise, material-wise, and to optimize the human condition in those places.
So this was study number 2. And what we did is we looked at 5 different cities and had 109 participants. And each participant in a standard office building was matched with somebody in a green office building. So we said, with everything that we learned in study 1, does that hold up in the real world? And it does. So these were the results. And you largely see the same result, which is compared to a conventional building, green buildings, lower VOC, platinum type buildings are much better. So the third study is we said, okay, this is great, but that's the US. What about other places in the world? How does ventilation and how does lower PM 2.5 specifically, how does that improve cognitive function? So for this study, we had people take tests via an app. And so the app had two parts. One was it would show up a word, like the color green, but it would be written in red and ask you to respond what was the color, not the word. And then the second part was a numerical test, so a math-based test. And what we were looking at is how does PM2.5 concentration exposure for these people, as well as CO2, impact the results of these tests? And so this is an eye chart. This was the results of the study, and it's a little difficult to read. So for these blue ones here, here, and here, slower to the right is worse, and then for these black ones, slower to the left is worse. But anyway, to summarize what we found was that it verified what we saw, which was increased ventilation rates, so lower CO2 as a proxy, and decreased PM2.5, both saw statistically significant results. So if you put this all together, buildings, generally 90% of the cost of a building isn't actually in the HVAC equipment, but it's in the people who are in the building, the workers of the building. Typically only about 10% of that is the operating costs. And now with the crisis, maybe that will grow to 20%, maybe it will grow a little bit more. But a lot of the capital from a workplace standpoint is going into the employee's salary. We saw enhanced ventilation and filtration as a key component to the building itself. So indoor air quality is important. And the big payback is higher cognitive function. And then we have the results of the 3 studies here. So if you want to learn more, Carrie has a website. It's thecogfxstudy.com. You're welcome to go there. There are a couple more videos. You can access the actual results of the reports. And with that, thank you very much.